Welcome back to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Jackson Tolliver. Thanks so much, as always, for tuning in. As always, we're going to go through all of the games that happened these past few days within all sports. Starting off with the Boston Celtics. Two great wins against the Hornets. You'd expect to win, but the Thunder last night, blowout win, albeit the Thunder were without their 1 and 2 options, which we'll get into. But let's start off with the Hornets, 118-104. My biggest takeaways about this game were actually about the Hornets, specifically Brandon Miller. He looks great. Brandon Miller, I think, is going to be a really good player in this league. He can score from all three levels. He's got length, athleticism, and he looks definitely the part of being the second best player out of this draft, in my opinion. Obviously, Wembanyama's first, right? We're not going to argue that. But I think Brandon Miller really could be the second best player, and he was a second best pick, so if so, they got that right. Obviously, all these guys have a lot of time to go left in their career, so we'll see how it shapes out, but he looks really good. Grant Williams getting the start at center. They kept calling him a polarizing figure on the broadcast in terms of the fan base. I don't think Grant Williams was ever a polarizing figure. I think Grant Williams, everyone hated him when he was bad, and let's face it, when he first got here, he was bad. And then when he became good, I think everyone liked him. And, Mike Gorman came out and said all this stuff about how, it was annoying and he yapped too much. I can't speak to what it was like within the building, but from an outside perspective, I think fans loved Grant Williams. When he was knocking down threes, when he was, jawing at other players. I know people got upset when he chirped at Jimmy Butler in that game 2, I believe it was, in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Butler came back, cooked, and beat the Celtics, which, I would say sealed their fate, but the Celtics did force a Game 7. It looked like it sealed their fate at the time. So regardless, I don't think Grant Williams was a polarizing player by any means. I think he was a respected player by the Celtics fans. But regardless, he had a revenge game, 23 points and 7 rebounds. I always thought Grant Williams was a likable guy. I think he loved being here. He loved playing with the Jays. And, I think he fit right in terms of the Boston culture and the Boston fan base. So I appreciate having a guy who's tough like that and who's not afraid to jaw at opponents. No Brown in this one, so Tatum, Porzingis, and White just kept on rolling. Hauser coming back, erupting for 25 points. I mentioned before that he's been struggling recently. It was a really tough offensive game for Drew Holiday. He's still getting back into the flow after he was dealing with that dead arm out for a couple of weeks. He only had 2 points, 1 for 11 shooting, so pretty abysmal there, obviously. But overall, this game, it's against the Hornets. They're crashing and burning. Steve Clifford, the coach of the Hornets, just announcing yesterday that he's going to transition into a front office role, so they're looking for new candidates to be the next head coach. No LaMelo Ball, no Mark Williams. Miles Bridges was fine. I don't think he should be rostered on an NBA team, but that's beside the point. This game is pretty much a nothing burger. It would be something if the Celtics lost, but they didn't, so we'll move on quickly. Last night's win, a big-time blowout, 135-100 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, there is an asterisk next to that result in that the Thunder didn't have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Jalen Williams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously their perennial MVP candidate. I think he's number 2 on the official NBA.com ladder. In my mind, he is the MVP. I think he deserves it over Jokic personally, especially if the Thunder end up finishing with that 1 seed. Obviously, the Celtics gave them a blow in terms of their hopes for that 1 seed last night, and the Sixers actually beat them the night before in Joel Embiid's return, which I'll talk about. But in my mind, he's taken this team ahead of schedule with where they're supposed to be. The Thunder are supposed to be that team for the next 5 or 10 years because of all the assets that they've stashed and the young talent they've established. But I don't think people expected them to be this good this year. So I think they're ahead of schedule, and I think that's almost entirely because of SGA, and we saw last night what happens when SGA is not in the game. Yes, they were also missing Jalen Williams. That's Jalen without the Y. The Thunder have 2 players named Jalen Williams on their team, one of them with a Y and one of them without a Y. So the good Jalen Williams, no offense to the other one, they're both good. The better Jalen Williams sat out last night. So you're looking at Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren to really be your 1 and 2. Holmgren against Porzingis wasn't a great matchup. Holmgren wasn't knocking down his shots from outside the arc. And Porzingis did a great job on him defensively, I thought. Even White was getting in there. Derek White got a block on him, which is incredible to see your guard getting a block on a 7+ footer. So yeah, I won't hold this loss against the Thunder. I still don't think that the Thunder are gonna make a ton of noise in the playoffs this year. I could see them being first round exits just because they don't have that experience. And I think that they're going to be playing a team that does. Like, they're going to be playing either the Suns or the Lakers or the Warriors, the Mavericks. So, like, I would take that team that has more experience over the Thunder, unless it ends up being the Kings. I could see them beating the Kings because they're really dealing with injuries right now. It's actually the Celtics' next opponent this week, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. But for me, I think the Thunder are a strong team, but they're not quite strong enough yet to get by those more experienced teams with those veterans. Porzingis was the guy last night, and I think he's the guy overall. You know, Jason Tatum is still the guy. He's still like our MVP candidate, our best player without a doubt. But Porzingis is the key to all of this to me, because the Celtics have never had a guy that's able to just dominate the way that he does on the inside. And he has that knockdown shot. Obviously, he's such a threat in terms of the pick and pop. When a player sets a screen for him, he, sags off that. They get the switch. They don't get there in time. Porzingis can shoot over just about anybody. So if he draws a smaller guard to defend him, he can get that shot, whether it's from outside the arc or from inside the arc. The Celtics are so good, and Joe Mazzulla is so good at creating mismatches for Porzingis, getting him in the right spot, that he can make consistent shots in, and getting him on a smaller defender so that he can do it easily. So he is just such a key to this offense and to this defense, really. I mean, I think Porzingis, he had 5 swats last night. I think his defense is often disregarded and not talked about, but I think Porzingis is a great defender. And it's similar to the impact that Robert Williams had on the Celtics for so many years, in that Porzingis is a great shot blocker and a help defender. Obviously, it looks different because Robert Williams was such a vertical threat in terms of his jumping. He was such an explosive player. He could really get up there for blocks. Porzingis doesn't jump. He's just tall enough to be able to stand still and just impose his presence. Williams was a better shot blocker than Porzingis in my mind. Let's not get it twisted. I think Robert Williams has the potential, when healthy, to be one of the best shot blockers in the NBA and one of the best lob threats in the NBA. But Porzingis just does it in a different way because of his size. So I still think that Porzingis really allows, the smaller defenders to play up more when they're guarding in man or in zone even as well. They can play up more and not have to worry as much about that drive because they know they have that safety blanket in a 7'3" freak athlete behind them in Kristaps Porzingis. So he is the key, both offensively and defensively, in my mind, to the Celtics championship, as well as Derek White, who got a really bad call last night. They gave up an and one. I forget who it was that scored it. I want to say Isaiah Joe, but I'm not 100% sure. So he was pissed off, and he just erupted after that. Offensively and defensively, Derek White took over in that fourth quarter. And the fourth quarter is really what it was. Tatum didn't have to play a minute. It was all Jaylen Brown taking over in that fourth quarter, both offensively and defensively. There's a sequence that happens at the beginning of the fourth quarter where Brown scores a jumper, comes back, gets a steal and then a slam, comes back, plays lockdown defense on Cason Wallace, and then hits another shot. So he really took over last night without Jason Tatum. Love to see that. Jaylen Brown, I thought, had a great game. Really, everybody did. Porzingis, as I already mentioned, but Drew Holiday also bounced back on offense. Like, these guys are really just firing. Al Horford was also great, was hitting some big-time threes. Now, it seems like this is going to be the 8-man rotation going forward. It's going to be obviously your starting 5, and then Horford, Hauser, and Pritchard. So I don't think Luke Cornett or Xavier Tillman are going to crack that rotation much going into the playoffs. NBA teams usually stick with that 8-man rotation, try to keep it tight. I wouldn't mind using one of those guys, especially in the earlier rounds, if the Celtics are able to establish a lead for themselves. I would love throwing those guys in, because I think if Al Horford were to miss some games, Xavier Tillman is a seamless replacement for him. He obviously doesn't have the long-range shooting that Al Horford does, but I think he has, obviously a similar build and a similar ability on defense. So I would want to keep Xavier Tillman hot. Luke Cornett is really good for certain matchups as well because he's such a great rebounder because of obviously his size. So I want to keep both of those guys ready and fresh going into the playoffs in case you do need them. But I anticipate Joe really sticking with this 8-man rotation, and I think Horford, Pritchard, and Hauser have earned the right to play off the bench, even though those guys have been struggling slightly. And I say struggling. Sam Hauser just had a 25-point game, so it's just different in terms of their consistency that we're used to seeing. But they were on a huge road trip, so now they're back home. I really anticipate them settling back into their roles and coming up clutch for the Celtics in some of these closing games. Chet Holmgren to me, because I mentioned, SGA and Jalen Williams, I feel like Chet Holmgren wants to be Kristaps Porzingis. I don't think he'll ever get there. Personally, I think Kristaps is always going to have a better jumper. Kristaps is, to me, I think Chet could get there in the paint and on defense, but Kristaps' jumper will always be better to me. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think that Kristaps Porzingis is the archetype for Chet Holmgren, and I think that that's Chet Holmgren's ceiling, is a Kristaps Porzingis. And that's no diss to Chet Holmgren. I think Kristaps Porzingis is a great player. I mean, he's part of this big three that the Celtics are now running with, that they hope to win a title with. But seeing those two guys play together really sparked that idea in me, like, okay, this is the guy that Chet Holmgren wants to be. And I think he has the potential to get there. Brown's hand is concerning me. I have that in my notes because it looked like he was wincing sometimes after some plays. He said after the game that he does have a sprain or a strain, and it's bothering him, but he doesn't think it's a long-term concern, anything to be worried about going forward. I am worried about it. One, there's the obvious concern of, okay, is it something more serious that's going to get worse? But also, is it going to impact your play? And to me, in my eyes, as someone who's been watching this team all season, I've seen every game, Brown looked a little bit off. He got some turnovers off that left hand. He missed some finishes that I feel like he's usually making with that left hand. So that concerns me. And obviously, Jaylen Brown in his left hand it's received a lot of flack through these last playoff runs, and I really don't want that to happen to him. He obviously takes a lot of pride. He hears the noise. He takes a lot of pride in the fact that he has gotten a lot better this year with that left hand, and I would just be really bummed for him if that injury causes him to struggle again with that left hand. So hopefully it's all good. Hopefully he can heal up. Maybe they'll sit him for a few games down the stretch here, as the Celtics did officially lock up both a 60-win season and the best record in the NBA last night. Obviously a huge accomplishment, but I hope they don't get too in their heads with this. I don't think they will. Joe Mazzulla said it well after the game. When it starts in the postseason, it's 0-0. It's a reset besides the seeding. So got to keep that mentality, but also acknowledge that, this is a pretty big achievement for this team, and the fans should be proud, and they should be proud of themselves. Cason Wallace, I'll also give a shout out to. He looked really good last night. He's another Kentucky guard, the Devin Booker SGA prototype. But he looked good. I anticipate him maybe overtaking Josh Giddey, to be honest, in terms of that starting spot down the road. We'll see. That's just speculation. The thing with the Thunder is that they're going to have to move on from one or multiple of these guys going forward because they have so many assets. You can't draft 35 players over the next 5 years. It's just impossible. So we'll see how that rolls out. Sam Presti, fellow Emerson graduate. I'm looking forward to see how he handles this situation going forward. Now the Indiana Pacers lost to the Brooklyn Nets last night, which has put them back into the play-in spot. Celtics fans, you should be breathing a sigh of relief and praying that it stays this way. Now I want to make this clear. I don't think the Celtics will lose to any team in the East. But what concerns me is another long and strenuous road like we saw in 2022, a road to the finals where they're just gassed at the end of it. I want them to ideally, and I mentioned 22, they got rid of the Nets in 22 in a sweep. I want that to happen again. I want them to be able to make easy work of whoever they play in the first round, because that's how it should be. It should not be a gauntlet from the first round to the second round to the third round. And I hate to say it, but if the Celtics play the Sixers or the Heat first round, you're looking at a gauntlet. There is no way the Celtics sweep the Heat, and there's no way the Celtics sweep the Sixers. The Pacers, albeit they're the one team out of those three that has beaten the Celtics twice this year, I think the Celtics have a chance to sweep. They've fallen off in terms of their form. Tyrese Halliburton has struggled from his shot this past month. I would anticipate, and no playoff experience from a lot of those guys. Aaron Nesmith was on the Celtics for some of their playoff runs, but didn't get time at all. So I would take that team first round out of those three. I'm hoping that the Celtics do end up with that team because I think they can cruise by them round one. I also think that if you have Miami and Milwaukee or Philly and Milwaukee playing first round, I don't know if Milwaukee makes it out of that first round. And to a lot of people, that's the team that they're the most afraid of for the Celtics. I would rather play the Sixers down the road especially considering the fact that Embiid usually runs out of steam down the road. As the playoffs go on, he usually gets more tired. We saw that last year, and he is obviously coming back from the meniscus injury, so we don't even know how he's going to be performing. But I would definitely prefer that these guys that are more of threats, the Sixers, the Heat, the Knicks, the Cavs, not really to me, and the Bucks, play each other in these first couple rounds and just take care of each other. That's just me. I would rather not have to deal with them in the first round. And that's not me ducking smoke. That's not me, thinking that the Celtics are going to lose. I just want them to have an easier time down the road. That's all I'm saying. So hopefully the Pacers are able to get that play-in spot, lose that first play-in game. And at that point, I don't even know if the Pacers, I could see the Hawks beating the Pacers in the second round. I could see the Pacers falling out of the playoffs because I don't think they're that good, frankly. I mean, they were a lot better at the beginning of the year. They've run out of gas a little bit. So I don't know. We'll see. The Hawks, Celtics would be a very interesting first round. Obviously, the Hawks just beat the Celtics twice last week. I think the Celtics would be dialed in. I think they would beat them in 4 or 5, but it'd be interesting. So I'd be excited to see that matchup. I'm excited to see who the Celtics end up playing first round. I just don't want it to be the Sixers or the Heat, me personally. I think the Celtics would beat one of those teams, but I would rather have an easier opponent first round. Now, the Sacramento Kings are coming to town tomorrow. It's a sneaky hard game, actually, but I think the Celtics will still win that one. They've been easy. They just made easy work of the Kings these past 2 years. They haven't lost since they've been quote unquote good. They beat them pretty bad last time out without Jason Tatum. The Kings are obviously dealing with some injuries. Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk are out. Don't anticipate them making out of the first round in the West, so I will take the Celtics pretty easily. I would imagine they're going to sit one of the starters, maybe JB, let him rest that hand a little bit. Even so, I will take the Celtics by double digits in this one as they keep on rolling. I like the Celtics. I think they'll lose one of those 2 games between the Kings. Sorry, not the Kings. The Bucks and the Knicks. I think they'll lose one of those, but I think they'll win the rest. They should close out the season on a high note. 65 wins. How great would that be? If they finish with a 65-win regular season going into the playoffs, they would be the clear favorites. They already are the clear favorites. But again, you don't want to let the regular season get too much in your head, but I would love to see them close out with a 65-win season. That is my goal for this team, and I think they'll do it. Let's move on to another team, not as in the clear as the Celtics by any means, but the Boston Bruins had a great result against Nashville, 3-0, as they are looking for the President's Cup. Obviously the best record in the NHL and the 1 seed in the East. This was a great game for the defense. Obviously, you want to post a shutout, and it was a great game for Linus Ullmark. 31 saves in the shutout. This, to me, is one of the best games the Bruins have played, and I love seeing them play this way down the stretch. If they play this way in the playoffs, watch out, because this looked like a Stanley Cup team to me. They didn't score until the third period. They were having trouble finding the back of the net, but they were still controlling the flow of play. They won the shot margin. They were killing off power plays pretty easily, pretty well. Charlie Coyle obviously had that great 2-on-1 goal, smooth finish from him. Great ability to track the puck. He was like, Ullmark hit it, little wraparound pass from his own goal, went up, and Coyle just skated right up to the net, was able to get it on that breakaway. Zaka was able to score off a wraparound assist, and then Pastrnak was able to find the empty netter. So it didn't feel like a 3-0 win because the Bruins didn't score until 6 minutes left in the third period, but it ended up shaping out that way. Like I said, defense was the key here from both, and goaltending as well. Ullmark was great. Defense was great. This was just a great game. And if the Bruins keep playing like this, they're going to be a really tough team to beat. Now, I am concerned about the Justin Brazeau injury that happened during this game. Montgomery right now saying that it's an upper body injury and that he is considered week to week. I'm really concerned about this because I think going into this season, when the Bruins lost Bergeron and they lost Krejci, I think a lot of people thought the Bruins were a top-heavy squad and that they should be concerned about their depth. But Justin Brazeau, the undrafted free agent that they signed, has been really good. He's been good when the top part of the team hasn't been good this past month. So I'm concerned because I think the depth is still slightly a concern for the Bruins, and Brazeau was someone who really alleviated that concern for me, along with Danton Heinen, Morgan Geekie. Obviously just really any guy that's not one of, the big guys, the Pasternaks, the Marchand, the McAvoy, the Coyles, all those guys. So that slightly concerns me. I hope that he is able to come back before the playoffs. But, if not, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But again, I would love to see him come back just to make sure that the Bruins have a good amount of depth as they head into the postseason. Now tonight, 7 p.m., we have a real marquee matchup. Two teams battling for the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference and the President's Cup. The Bruins go to Carolina to play the Hurricanes. Both teams, like I said, looking for seeding. Both teams are hot recently. You got to contain Sebastian Aho. He's looked really good for them all season, and especially recently. I believe he has 85 points on the season, 33 goals. So that'll be a tough guy to contain. It's a really, really big test for that defense. I mean, really, the whole front three for Carolina has looked good all season, and they're going to be good. That's another team. Like the Hurricanes and the Rangers are the teams that I'm most afraid of the Bruins facing in the playoffs down the stretch. You obviously can't discount the Panthers either, and some other teams as well in the East could definitely give the Bruins trouble. But for me, the Hurricanes are a big test. The Bruins haven't beaten them this series. Carolina has won their only matchup. They have 2 more this season, one tonight and then one in a few days back at the Garden. But this, to me, would be the biggest win for the Bruins so far this season if they're able to pull it off, because the Hurricanes are a huge threat. This is obviously crunch time. It's not playoffs yet, but you're trying to lock down that 1 seed, trying to lock down that President's Cup. So we'll see what happens. I think it'll be a big test for the defense, but I think the offense should be able to roll by. I think that the Bruins have a stronger defense. Based off what I saw against Nashville, they definitely do. So we'll see what happens. It should be a battle. I will take the Bruins narrowly. I don't know, though, because then again, the Hurricanes haven't played since Saturday. They're coming off rest. The Bruins are obviously, this is their last stop of a grueling road trip where it's probably been the hardest road trip they've had all year. No, I changed my mind. I'm going to take Carolina, unfortunately. If the Bruins can win, I'll be happy. I took the Predators, and we all saw what happened there, so we'll see what happens, but I will take the Bruins. No, I'll take the Hurricanes. I'm all over the place. I'll take the Hurricanes narrowly. But then this weekend, the Bruins come back to the Garden finally against the Panthers. Now, they beat the Panthers just last week or 2 weeks ago when they visited them in Sunshine, Florida. I will take the Bruins again in this one. No reason not to. The fans will be excited they're coming home. The players will be happy to be home after a long road trip. I think they have the momentum after they got some tough wins during this road trip. So I think that the Bruins will win that one. I think it'll be high-powered, high-scoring, 4-3 for the Bruins. Maybe in overtime. Who knows? That was the exact score it was last time. I'll take the exact same score, to be honest with you. I would take the exact same score to finish that game. Now let's move into the Red Sox. Easter win, swept the A's. They are 4-0 since I last recorded a podcast. 5-2 on the season. Now, who saw that coming? I did. I want to say that I did, because before the season, I said they were going to be 2-2 against the Mariners, and then the last episode I said they were going to sweep the A's. So I predicted this. I would just like to say I've been a guru when it comes to predicting the Red Sox so far, barring a few players that I didn't expect being so good so far this year and have been really good. Ceddanne Rafaela, for one. The pitching staff, for one. The pitching rotation, rather. The starting pitchers. They have looked really, really good so far this season. And it makes you wonder, as a Red Sox fan, is there something here? Maybe. Now, sweeping the A's isn't very impressive. They're the worst team in baseball. And these last 2 wins against the A's were just by 1 run. The second game was in extras. Albeit the Red Sox offense was good that game. Bayo dug him into a hole that game. Gave up 2 2-run home runs, which, kept the A's in it. It was their only source of runs for the whole game. Offense was able to obviously bounce back and bring them to extras. Defense played great the whole game. Ceddanne Rafaela, I know I already mentioned him, but goodness gracious, that catch he made in center field was great, and he should have that spot locked down for the rest of the year. I really think so. Ceddanne Rafaela looks great on offense and defense, and he has a lot of potential to be really good for this team, not just this season, but for a long time. He's a really young guy, obviously. Let's rewind a little bit, go back to that Easter win. Emmanuel Valdez, the star of the day. He had a 3-run homer. Whitlock, starting pitcher that day, looked the part of a competent, I would even say good starting pitcher. He had 8 strikeouts. He looked really good. So Whitlock was good. The hitting was good. The defense was good. Tyler O'Neill, another home run. He's looking like a great addition. He already has, I believe that's 2 on the year. It might be 3. Well, I know it's 2 because he had the opening day one and then he had the one in this game. But he's been productive so far. So I really like him as an addition. And this was a great result for, and it's against a good team on the road. The Mariners are a good team. I will take a split. I'm happy with that. When you pair it up with the opening day win that they had, so, morale is high. And 5-2. That is not too shabby. The A's game, the first one, Tanner Houck was great, so let's not make any mistakes there. I believe it was 10 strikeouts for Houck. He looked great. That game should not have been 9-0. The A's shouldn't have scored, but they made 5 errors on defense, which is quite a way to welcome the Sox to the Coliseum, right? And that led to a lot of those runs, so it shouldn't have been that much of a blowout, but alas, it was. Second game, I already talked about. Yesterday's game was tighter than it should have been. Again, the offense didn't perform as well as it should have. Just 1-0 off of a sacrifice fly in the 4th inning from Valdez. So it should have been better, and that game concerns me. But luckily tonight they have a day off. They have a chance to go in to Anaheim to play the Los Angeles Angels starting tomorrow, another 3-game series. I think they'll win that series. I don't think they'll sweep it. I think it'll be 2-1 because Mike Trout is so good, and the A's are obviously better than. Sorry, the Angels are better than the A's. So we'll see how that one shakes out. But I mean, the Sox are going to come back home with at least an even record. I think there's no way they get swept by the Angels, so it's going to be a winning record, which is a very encouraging sign. I don't see why people wouldn't be encouraged. I know that the A's are a bad team, but the Mariners are a good team. The Angels aren't a great team. But regardless, it's a road trip to open up your season. They looked great in spring training. They're looking good on this first road trip to open up the season. Why would you not be excited as a Red Sox fan right now? If they come home and they keep this up, ESPN released their new power rankings today. They're 13th. I think they'll be in the top 10 soon. I really do, because I like what I'm seeing. I don't see why this team can't succeed long term. They have young talent backed up by solid veterans. Devers, Story, some of those guys that can really transform this team and push them into that top 10 conversation. And then the young guys, Rafael's look great. Duran has looked good. He's stolen a crap ton of bases. I want to say he set the record for the most bases stolen in the first 3 games of a season. So there's so much energy. The chemistry looks great. I love this celebration. I love that. I'm going to start doing that when I'm walking to school. I love what they're doing there. And I think that, despite the fact that John Henry didn't invest in this team that's ready to win now, they're ready to win now. And I think that moving forward, they'll bring in some more pieces, during the trade deadline if things keep going this way. I'm optimistic as a Red Sox fan, not just for this year, but for the future, because I think they actually ended up with a lot of young talent to build on. Vaughn Grissom is going to come back at the end of the month, who they acquired just this past offseason. So I anticipate this team actually being good this year. For real. I mentioned my first episode that I was second least confident about them. They've definitely leapfrogged the Revolution. I'm the third most confident about them now. So yeah, I think they'll do really well against the A's, and I just anticipate this team being good this year. Moving on, I just mentioned the Revolution. 4-0 loss in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, effectively ending their bid in that tournament. Coming back to play Charlotte in Foxborough this weekend. Is this a must-win game or what? They haven't won. They're the only team in the MLS who hasn't won a game this season. They did get a draw against Chicago. Charlotte is 2-2-2. Good for 8 points. The definition of mid, really. The Revolution have been the definition of awful. So hopefully they can, return. I mean, they've been home for a while, so not even return home. Just return to MLS play after a bye week and earn a result. Not a draw. You need a win. The Revs need to start stringing together wins for people to think that they are actually a legitimate team. But watching that game against Club America, I'm just thinking to myself, what did Bruce Arena say to get him fired? Because ever since that whole thing happened, this team has taken such a dramatic turn. And it's really, really unfortunate because they were well on their way to being a contender. They really were. I mean, they were second in the East, I believe, the day that he was placed on leave. And it is just, I mean, I don't know about the situation, so I don't want to comment on it too much, but it makes me sad to think about that. I feel like all of this potential on the team is being completely wasted. And it's a absolute bummer. But it is what it is. I just got sorry, I'm all bummed out now. I think I'm more confident about the Patriots moving forward than the Revs. The Revs are at the bottom of my list, and this is just an absolute bummer because I think they had the talent to be better. They're just not better, and hopefully they turn it around. We'll see what happens, but for now, it's looking bleak. The one bright spot is they are starting to have hearings and meetings about maybe building a stadium in Everett. I think that would bring a lot more fans to the Revolution if they had their own stadium, if it was more accessible to the greater Boston area. So I think that'd be a great move. And I know the Revs are all for it. I think the players are all for it. It's just a matter of, can it get approved by the local officials? I hope it does. I think that'd be a great, me personally, I live in Winthrop, which is right outside Boston. Everett's a lot closer than Foxborough. So I'd definitely be going to a lot more games. So let's hope, fingers crossed. I think it'd be a great move for the team. So we'll see what happens. But for now, I can't predict them to win in Charlotte. I just can't do it. So I will take Charlotte 2-1, 2-0, 3-1. I just have absolutely no confidence in this team right now. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully they use this as a jumping pad to start turning this thing around, and they can salvage this season, which right now frankly looks like a disaster. Celtics, Red Sox, Bruins, and Revolution in their games coming up this weekend. Hopefully I come back Sunday a happy person with some more wins to talk about. But until then, thanks for tuning in as always to Title Town Talk. I'm your host, Jackson Tolliver. I'll see you on Sunday.